Today we're going to talk about misleading headlines regarding a speech Michael Knowles gave at CPAC supposedly calling for genocide, as well as some very misleading information regarding the January 6th riots. We'll be going over some of the footage that has been released on Tucker Carlson's show today. Not only that, we'll be talking about how the way we handle being wrong in general is negatively and severely impacting our social climate. I'm Jake Critcher. This is Jake's Takeaway. Welcome back to the show. I hope your week has been good. Let's jump in. So, Michael Knowles gave a speech at CPAC regarding transgenderism and how the ideology is basically a poison on our society. And he made one line of comment in the speech that really has the internet going bananas right now. It was a while ago at this point, but they just now picked it up, I suppose. Here's that clip.
There can be no middle way in dealing with transgenderism. It is all or nothing. If transgenderism is true, if men really can become women, then it's true for everybody of all ages. If transgenderism is false, as it is, if men really can't become women, as they cannot, then it's false for everybody too. And if it's false, then we should not indulge it, especially since that indulgence requires taking away the rights and customs of so many people. If it is false, then for the good of society, and especially for the good of the poor people who have fallen prey to this confusion, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely. The whole preposterous ideology at every level.
You'll notice after he said eradicate transgenderism, not people. You can be against things without being, you can be against things without being against people who do the things. That's a logical standpoint. But you'll notice right after he said those things, he immediately clarified even further that the whole ideology must be totally gotten rid of. So you can't, it's a serious stretch to be saying that he wants people to be eradicated as a people. I mean, come on. It's obviously not what he's saying. After pushback from Knowles himself, he pushed back on Twitter. He retweeted on these article headlines and he said, "This is libelous. I want a retraction immediately." And pretty much instantaneously, they took down the articles. Now, if you didn't lie, what reason do you have to take it down? If that isn't proof enough that they were outright just totally inflating this thing, then I don't know what is. They wouldn't be scared of losing a lawsuit if they were right, but they were clearly not right, and they had zero confidence in that fact, so they took it down immediately. There's still some that have it up, but there's posts from the New York Post, the Washington Post, Rolling Stone. They all blatantly lied and used basically the same headline to falsely accuse Knowles, and that's defamation, so he could easily win a lawsuit. So obviously when he said that, he meant it. And they took it down pretty much immediately. Now, if you listen to that whole segment, it's really not hard to determine that what they say is totally false. You have to read between the lines. But they probably knew that he would push back, and they figured that they would have to change the headlines. But the damage is done. For all those people that don't read past the headlines, you'll never hear the end of it, because they read what they wanted to read, and they already believe what they want to believe. And they may have already thought these things about him, but to them, this solidifies it, even though they didn't read the article. They saw the headline and assumed. That's the power of these headlines. So I implore you, I beg you, read the article and see what's quote and what's total opinion piece. I don't care if it's where you're getting it from, but if you read the article, oftentimes you'll find that the headline is disproved in its own article. And that goes for pretty much any media thing, because they want you to click. And once you click and you do a little, even in their own article, they only can say so much without inflating it with their own words. Just look at the facts, look at the actual what happened, the words that were said. You can read between the lines, but that's all speculation at that point. So I beg you to read past the headlines, because that's how stuff like this happens. We can't keep incentivizing them to propagate this false information because we refuse to read past the headlines. We got to be more diligent about that. Or at least just don't even have an opinion on this stuff if you don't actually read the content and have a real set piece for what's going on. If you're like me and not like the world's first 100% perfect android ever created, you've been wrong before. It sucks. It can be humiliating. But what's more humiliating is not being humble and taking the L. It makes it so much worse. I believe when people are faced with being wrong, they react one of two ways. Admitting they're wrong and conceding to the other side with some honesty and a little bit of dignity. Or going into denial, doubling down, and hardening their hearts against all reason because they don't want to lose. Sometimes it's not even about being right, but just feeling like they've finished out on top, as if losing is worse than being wrong. I'll give an example of this. Let me know if you've ever done this, because I have, to my shame, more than once. There have been times where I'll be using a computer program or something along those lines and struggling to work something that I thought I knew how to work quite well. Then I'll ask someone for help and they'll tell me, oh, in this case you have to click this, and then you can do this thing you were trying to do. And I can react one of two ways. I can say, oh man, okay, thanks, that makes sense. Or, number two, I can say, that doesn't make any sense. Why does it work that way? That's stupid and it shouldn't work that way. But it does work that way. And I was wrong. And I was doing it wrong. This is where the culture is. No one will accept being wrong. We feel the need to win at all costs, even sacrificing truth and logic. Everyone wants their degrees to equal experience, or their experience to equal knowledge, and they rage when it's not the case. We're taught to think that our degrees or experience make us immune to losing debates or social issues. I can see how it would be infuriating when you find out that that degree doesn't inherently make you intelligent on a topic. And that's another thing. People assume degree holders or experts in whatever field are all-knowing sources in that field. But they were taught by humans. How do you get a degree? Lots of research papers, reading from books, and the internet? Well, anyone can do that and not have a degree. It's the same information. The time before you had a degree, when you were studying, if you have one, like I do, sometimes I regret it, I won't lie to you, but I'm mostly glad that I got it, but, comes with its pros and cons. But anyways, if you're like me and you have a degree, it's the same information. The information was there before and after you had the degree. So what did you do to get it? You went on the internet, you went into the library, and you read books. Anyone can do that. You don't have to have a degree to do that. So that doesn't automatically make you more intelligent on a subject than someone who did some self-homework. In fact, it might even be better to do self-homework because you've been motivated by your own interests to get into this stuff rather than, I don't know, if you're like me, I didn't love school or anything. So there were a lot of times where homework just felt like homework and just stuff I had to get through so that I could get back to enjoying my life. It can be different. You can have better retention if you're going in it just to self-educate and edify. So it's the same information. Everyone has the right to debate anyone else. It doesn't matter if one has a degree and one does not. You should be able to defend your views regardless, right? Especially if you have a degree, right? So you should be able to debate anyone who's beneath you or doesn't have a degree without any trouble if this degree makes you so intelligent. So you shouldn't be afraid of debate, in theory. It's fine to have a degree and it's fine not to have a degree, but you're going to be wrong regardless if you have one or not. The difference is how you handle it. Largely the woke culture, in an effort to mitigate embarrassment or distract from being wrong, people are just doubling down and hardening their hearts because they can't accept being wrong. They don't want to do the change that comes with being wrong. So instead, they're dismantling the entire system to more closely fit their wrong ideology, not stopping long enough to ponder if they are even right. They're just raging to win the argument or to win the fight, even if They might not even believe they're right. They just want to be the side that wins, even if they're wrong. I think this is an explanation for why they can be so nasty at the tiniest little prod to their beliefs. They've already hardened before they even talk to you on whatever woke subject. In the story of Moses, just look at how many plagues it took to finally convince Pharaoh to release the Israelites. Even then, he still pursued them with rage. It's like, I'm wrong, but you can't continue being right the way you are without my hammer coming down on you. It's just a grudge at that point. You lost. You're a sore loser, Pharaoh. Now, this isn't to say that only the left does this, obviously. It also isn't to say that sometimes, yes, the system is legitimately stupid and needs to be changed. If it can be made more effective, by all means, help change it. However, it's a very different story if you're changing a system to validate your wrongness or shouting over someone so no one else hears how wrong you are. Drowning out the voices of reason. In Pharaoh's case, he just jumped right to attempted mass murder, but I don't think most people want that. Humble, loving people aren't looking to dismantle every system they come across. It's hard to be wrong, but it's better to admit it and get better than to harden and not only embarrass yourself further, but also turn into a tyrant who destroys a good system in a crusade to be still wrong, but on the side that takes over and wrong. Speaking of being wrong, we were told for a very, very long time many things about January 6th. And most of that stuff, I think, generally everybody believed at first because we just didn't have a lot of information. Some people questioned, how did these reporters get this information if the public doesn't know it? Where are they getting their data from? The biggest things were, for instance, this headline here says that 5 people died, including 2 officers and 3 rioters. But the fact of the matter is, only 1 person died, and it wasn't one of the police. It in fact was a trigger-happy cop on one of the rioters who was unarmed. So that's one of the biggest lies told. Not only that, but we were told that not 1 but 2 officers died. One was totally fabricated. The other didn't die on January 6th, but had a stroke later on. We saw many headlines and video clips saying to that effect. Even political theater going on with the appearance of the entire riots altogether. For instance, this one.
Officers on the ground, they were bleeding, they were throwing up. I saw friends with blood all over their faces. I was slipping in people's blood.
As I was swarmed by a violent mob, they ripped off my badge. They grabbed and stripped me of my radio. They seized ammunition that was secured to my body. They began to beat me with their fists and with what felt like hard metal objects.
Now, if it was that bad, where's the photos? Where's the videos? We don't seem to mind showing footage of pretty much anything else on the internet. If you were slipping on people's blood, where's the footage of that? Where's the photos? If it would have been so easy to prove if that was the case. But clearly you're lying because we got no information on it. Now, I don't know why these police officers are lying. It seems insane to me, but they must have. There's no evidence to support their claims. Now, I'm not here to deny that there was, in fact, a riot. People certainly broke through windows and got into the Capitol. But the idea that it was entirely their idea is clearly proven to be wrong with this footage. The supposed shaman of QAnon was led practically by the hand in what looks like a tour through the Capitol. Doesn't seem all that insane to me. And then he's later shown praying and asking, or rather thanking God for the clarity of the officers to let them in. So they thought they were allowed to be there. That doesn't excuse the people that broke through windows and broke stuff on the way in, but people can be seen picking up stuff that fell over, moseying through. And one of the officers that supposedly got killed, that later ended up dying of a stroke, totally unrelated to the riots, can be seen walking around with a helmet, so I don't know how you die from a head injury, way after the time that he supposedly died. Now, this goes back again to the headlines issue. People have still been holding on to the talking point that this officer died because they haven't read past the headlines. So they still think that there's an officer out there that died from a rioter on January 6th, and it's simply not true. But they don't know that. And it's unequivocally false with all the information we have now. But since they don't read past the headlines, and maybe they're not politically plugged in much at all you see is the headlines. And so they're gonna believe that this officer was shot and killed when he never was. And then the articles that come out saying that the officials said that he didn't even die on that day, those are silently released and not put on the front page, and nobody ever sees it. I can't not talk about the January 6th footage because it's the biggest news right now by far. And we have people like Chuck Schumer asking people to censor Tucker Carlson and for Tucker Carlson not to show the rest of the footage.
Condemn Mr. Carlson for siding with the enemies of democracy. I strongly condemn Speaker McCarthy's actions and fiercely oppose his decision to share this footage with Carlson. I urge Fox News to order Carlson to cease propagating the big lie on his network and to level with their viewers about the truth behind the efforts to mislead the public.
Calling it cherry picking and all that. If this is cherry picking, what was the footage before this? Was that not cherry picking? Also, what do you expect us to do with 40,000 hours of footage? How is he supposed to fit that in an hour-long show? And most of it's probably going to be totally boring footage that's just a camera pointing at a room with no one in it. But I don't know what you expect us to do. You have to cherry pick. But even so, if your narrative is so true, then what about this is disproving that? If your narrative is so true, then more footage should be a good thing. But it's not. And you don't want that getting out. That's too bad. So I think the main takeaway today, folks, is when you're wrong, just take the L. Take it on the chin, like a grown-up, and move on. Sometimes you're just wrong. Also, just read past the headlines, for heaven's sake. Don't believe the headlines just because they're shocking and you might believe them. If they're so insanely shocking, like the call for genocide of any people group, know that that does in fact sound insane and unbelievable, probably because it's not true. Read the article. You'll find that it is inflated. So I'll leave it there for this week. Thanks for listening to Jake's Takeaway. Please give a like, a subscribe, hit that bell, get notified for everything. Thanks for listening. I'm Jake Critcher. This has been Jake's Takeaway. I'll see you next week.